Merci. Bien. Alors ce soir, nous avons eu quelques problèmes techniques et nous ne pourrons pas diffuser en direct comme nous vous l'avons annoncé. Mais je vous souhaite quand même la bienvenue à cette deuxième édition de notre série Parlons des arts. Donc, je tiens aussi à remercier nos partenaires, la communauté séfarade unifiée du Québec et le Centre Cummings de leur soutien. Et j'espère que vous ferez l'effort de regarder cette vidéo sur YouTube. Alors ce soir, le comité francophone de la Bibliothèque publique juive de Montréal a le plaisir de présenter un sujet inédit que l'anthropologue et ethnomusicologue Jessica Roda, notre invitée, explore depuis quelques années. Il s'agit de la production artistique des femmes de la communauté chassidique et du rôle des femmes artistes dans ces communautés. Alors, je vais vous présenter tout d'abord Jessica brièvement. Donc, Jessica Roda est professeure adjointe de civilisation juive à la Walsh School of Foreign Service de Georgetown University à Washington. Actuellement, elle est à Montréal pour une année sabbatique et elle sera chercheure invitée auprès de l'Institut d'études sur le genre, la sexualité et le féminisme de l'Université McGill. Alors donc, elle va faire une session cet automne à cet institut, puis à l'hiver, elle va être chercheure invitée auprès de l'Institut d'études canadiennes de McGill, aussi de l'Université McGill, où elle donnera le cours Jewish Orthodox Women in North America. Alors cette séance va être bilingue, on va commencer en français avec Jessica, mais par la suite, on aura une invitée qui représente une cinéaste juive chassidique qui s'adressera à nous en anglais. Alors, quelques mots sur Jessica. Bien sûr, c'est une chercheuse infatigable. Elle a plusieurs cordes à son arc, plusieurs sujets d'intérêt. Et notamment, elle a récemment publié sa première monographie sur les judéo-espagnols de France, famille, communauté, patrimoine musical. Alors, c'est se réinventer au présent. Voilà, sa première monographie. Et elle a également publié plusieurs articles dans diverses revues, un comité de lecture sur le patrimoine musical judéo-espagnol, la vie contemporaine chassidique à Montréal et à New York. Et elle travaille actuellement sur un deuxième livre autour de l'univers artistique des femmes chassidiques en Amérique du Nord. Et elle vient de m'annoncer qu'elle a signé avec New York University Press pour la publication de ce livre. Donc, félicitations, Jessica, c'est une bonne nouvelle. En tout cas, Jessica et moi, nous nous connaissons depuis quelques années. Nous nous sommes rencontrés autour de l'œuvre de mon père, Samuel Marléby, au sujet de laquelle elle a écrit plusieurs articles, dont un tout nouveau qui va paraître dans la revue Religions. En fait, Jessica, tu t'intéresses surtout aux implications politiques de l'art et de différentes facettes de l'art. Bon, peut-être plus aux implications sociales du côté de la communauté chassidique, mais du côté de la musique séfarade et judéo-arabe, tu as vraiment étudié et creusé les implications politiques de toute cette production artistique, effectivement, dans un contexte postcolonial. En tout cas, revenons à ton travail sur le rôle des femmes artistes dans la communauté chassidique. Qu'est-ce que tu peux nous en dire?
Oui, merci beaucoup, Yolande, pour cette invitation. Ça me fait très plaisir de venir parler du travail en cours et plus particulièrement d'inviter aussi Malky Weingartner dans la deuxième partie qui est une filmatographe, screenwriter et une amie maintenant aussi avec laquelle je travaille pour ce deuxième ouvrage. Alors, je voulais commencer cette présentation par vous introduire en fait à un nouveau clip qui est paru exactement la même journée, le 26 mars 2020, au moment où la série Unorthodox, qui a été très, très populaire sur Netflix, qui a fait et qui continue à faire la une des journaux en ce qui concerne les mini-séries sur Netflix. Puisque cette même journée, le 26 mars 2020, Dobie Baum, qui est une juive chassidique de la communauté Ger à New York, a lancé un single qui s'intitule It is meant to be et qui était une réponse à la crise autour du COVID-19. Alors, je vous laisse d'abord écouter cette chanson et ensuite on va poser des questions autour de cette chanson.
D'accord.
The world is standing still, feelings of disbelief. The virus out to kill, causing havoc and grief. No one knows what to believe. Our fate is unknown. Confusion fills the air. No one can describe contagious fear, anxious to survive. Even though we're in this together, we feel all alone. We must hold on to each other, but no touching hands. Oh, we must come to realize that God makes the plans. Tonight, unite, let's fight this outbreak, heartache and darkness. We know we trust Hashem that it is meant to be. We must hold on to each other, but no touching hands. Oh, we must come to realize that God makes the plans. Tonight, unite, let's fight this outbreak, heartache and darkness. We know we trust Hashem that it is meant to be.
Donc, vous venez d'entendre la chanson interprétée par Dobie Baum, qui aujourd'hui habite à New York, qui est mariée à un homme de la communauté Ger, de la communauté chassidique. Dobie est originaire de Londres et elle a créé, lorsqu'elle est arrivée à New York il y a quelques années, le Brooklyn Girls Choir. Alors, ce qui est assez intéressant, c'est que son histoire contredit d'une part, cette image des femmes qui n'ont pas le droit d'être dans l'espace artistique que la mini-série Unorthodox met en lumière. Et l'autre paradoxe aussi est qu'elle est présente sur YouTube. Alors, il y a quelque chose d'intéressant et de peut-être paradoxal ou contradictoire dans cette présentation de Dobie Baum et de sa chanson qui est accessible sur YouTube. Pourquoi elle est paradoxale? Parce que la plupart du temps, les femmes chassidiques et les femmes artistes interprètent ou jouent ou mettent à disponibilité l'ensemble de leur pratique artistique, de leur production artistique uniquement pour les femmes et par les femmes dans un espace très privé. Pourquoi? Parce qu'il y a la question de la modestie qu'on appelle tznius et plus particulièrement pour la chanson, la question de kol isha, l'idée qu'on garde et on préserve cet espace artistique uniquement pour les femmes.
Alors, attends, je vais juste intervenir pour expliquer kol isha, c'est la voix des femmes, c'est ça, donc on ne peut pas, et le principe de tzniut, c'est la pudeur, donc voilà.
Exactement.
Et kol isha, c'est qu'on ne peut pas entendre. C'est-à-dire qu'un homme ne peut pas entendre la voix d'une femme, un homme orthodoxe, juif orthodoxe.
Voilà, dans le judaïsme orthodoxe.
Oui.
Et en fait, l'idée de modestie, il y a plusieurs interprétations. Comment est-ce que c'est l'idée aussi dans Tznius de ne pas mettre en avant l'individu. Il y a beaucoup, donc c'est pas uniquement une question de vêtements, mais c'est aussi une question de modestie intérieure. Donc il y a beaucoup d'éléments aussi autour de comment est-ce que l'on peut exprimer cette modestie. Et évidemment, dépendamment des différents mouvements dans l'orthodoxie, il va y avoir différentes interprétations. Alors, dans la plupart du temps, quand on parle du féminisme au sein de l'univers juif, il y a une tension assez forte entre ce féminisme libéral, qui est très, très impliqué justement par le judaïsme influencé par le judaïsme libéral, et de l'autre côté, le monde orthodoxe qui est souvent vu comme justement où il n'y a pas de féminisme possible, où la femme voilà, en opposition. Et d'ailleurs, on le voit dans Unorthodox et dans beaucoup d'autres film, il y a cette idée que la femme n'a pas d'ingentivité, ne trouve pas de place si justement elle ne quitte pas la communauté. Alors, Dobby Baum nous propose, et l'ensemble des artistes femmes avec lesquelles je travaille, nous proposent de repenser cette question-là et nous disent que ce n'est pas ça le judaïsme dans leur monde racidique, dans leur monde ultra-orthodoxe, c'est justement de pouvoir créer, de pouvoir repenser le judaïsme et d'Occident et de trouver aussi de empowerment, d'être main-d'œuvre de sa propre féminité à travers cet espace fait pour les femmes et uniquement par les femmes. Alors, c'est bien sûr, c'est pas pour dire que c'est toutes les femmes qui sont des artistes et que c'est pas vu comme quelque chose de marginal. Bien sûr qu'il y a des tensions et certaines personnes ou certaines femmes aussi qui vont voir ça comme peut-être ne respectant pas justement cette interprétation de Kolisha ou ne respectant pas la manière dont on devrait concevoir la tzniut, la modestie. Alors, la manière dont Dobby Baum et l'ensemble de ces artistes avec lesquels je travaille négocient cette idée-là, c'est qu'elles se disent, nous, on met Kolisha lorsqu'on rend notre musique accessible sur les CD, c'est écrit, on n'est pas visible, on ne montre pas forcément publiquement. L'idée de public et de privé est très, très importante dans cette définition, dans sa manière de voir, en fait, et d'interpréter le Kolisha et l'idée de modesty.
Donc, si je comprends bien, les productions sonores, c'est-à-dire les chants, tout ça, sont destinés exclusivement aux femmes.
Voilà, elles sont destinées exclusivement aux femmes. Néanmoins, comme elle me dit, ce n'est pas de leur responsabilité. Donc, il y a différentes interprétations, mais pour elles, elles mettent Kolisha uniquement pour les femmes, mais ce ne sont pas leur responsabilité si des hommes décident d'aller écouter. Voilà. Alors, il y a d'autres personnes ou dans d'autres groupes, ils vont dire, ben, non, on ne va pas du tout les rendre possibles ou accessibles sur YouTube. Alors, ça, c'est ce qui se passe de façon générale dans le monde ultra-orthodoxe racidique. C'est-à-dire que les arts sont extrêmement présents. Je travaille avec certaines écoles, je travaille avec plusieurs jeunes filles où il y a des performances théâtrales, il y a de la danse, il y a du chant. Néanmoins, c'est complètement privé et on enregistre, ou si on enregistre, mais c'est uniquement à titre privé. Alors, c'est une autre manière aussi de concevoir l'art, une autre manière de concevoir la créativité, puisque dans cet espace très, très privé, l'idée aussi de copyright n'existe pas vraiment. Donc, c'est un peu l'idée que ça appartient un peu à tout le monde. Donc, ou bien on va composer une chanson, donc quelqu'un va nous payer pour composer les paroles, mais ensuite, ça appartient à la communauté. Et ça aussi, ça correspond à cette idée de tzniut où on ne se met pas forcément en avant publiquement. Alors, c'est une autre manière de voir la question de la modestie, une autre manière de penser aussi la créativité et de penser les arts. Et là encore, j'insiste sur cette idée que ça ne veut pas dire que les arts ne sont pas là, les arts sont là, mais c'est une autre manière. Et en tant qu'anthropologue, on est là pour expliquer, enfin, les anthropologues sont là pour expliquer ces différentes manières de concevoir la créativité, de concevoir aussi qu'est-ce que modestie peut dire dans la culture d'un autre. Alors ça, c'est l'espace privé, donc les jeunes filles, etc. Et c'est ce qui est la norme, c'est considéré comme la norme. Dobby Baum, la chanson que vous avez écoutée, évidemment, ce sont déjà aussi des artistes professionnels. Ce n'est pas forcément la norme et elles font face à un certain nombre de défis. Il y a des moments où elles sont invitées en public dans des espaces beaucoup plus privés, où d'autres femmes vont les mettre au défi et leur dire « mais comment ça, tu chantes en public, dehors, ça ne se fait pas, etc. » Donc, il y a des tensions parce que ce sont différentes manières de voir la place de la femme dans l'orthodoxie et aussi différentes manières de penser et d'imaginer comment les arts et comment les femmes peuvent mettre en fait, à disponibilité.
S'exprimer dans le domaine artistique.
Voilà. Alors, c'est quand même un nouveau phénomène, et ça, je tiens à le dire, plus en plus important, parce qu'aussi dans les espaces privés comme dans les écoles, de plus en plus, les familles, les enfants, les jeunes surtout, demandent cette façon de musique, de film, Et pour éviter que justement ils aillent consommer en fait une filmatographie ou la musique qui n'est pas cachère, qui n'est pas conforme, alors il y a beaucoup de l'autorité religieuse, certaines personnes de l'autorité religieuse qui disent il faut aussi créer cet espace-là. Alors il y a une tension, mais c'est un phénomène depuis à peu près 15 ans. Évidemment, les nouvelles technologies, on peut facilement avoir un studio à la maison, des films beaucoup plus facilement. On voit aussi cette émergence de tout ce cinéma communautaire. De plus en plus, on n'est plus obligé d'avoir des longs films Hollywood. On peut donner sa voix facilement et rendre ça accessible sur Vimeo. Et dans le cadre des femmes chassidiques ultra-orthodoxes avec lesquelles je travaille, il y a cette idée de mettre à disponibilité sur DVD ou encore sur des plateformes comme Mostly Music, où on peut télécharger les films. Évidemment, c'est écrit toujours Kolisha, uniquement réservé for girls and women. Mais il y a quelque chose qui est rendu disponible et qui est en train de grandir et évidemment de transformer aussi ces normes de l'expérience artistique chez les jeunes filles et chez les femmes. Donc ça, c'est assez fascinant de l'observer de près, cette dynamique entre l'espace privé ou qui continue d'exister, où les jeunes filles et les femmes vont, souvent beaucoup les jeunes filles, on le voit à l'école, vont continuer à être sur scène, etc. Et de l'autre côté, l'émergence de ces artistes professionnels qui sont souvent formés aussi un peu à l'extérieur de la communauté. Alors, ça reste parfois tabou, ou je dirais ça reste tabou, mais qui ont un accès à une formation professionnelle et qui ensuite vont intégrer ou réintégrer leur savoir au sein de la norme.
Est-ce que c'est un compromis que les rabbins acceptent, que les leaders communautaires acceptent, je suppose?
Alors, c'est intéressant cette question d'autorité parce que le plus fascinant avec ça, c'est étant donné que c'est un espace réservé par les femmes, uniquement par les femmes, les hommes n'ont pas accès à ça, surtout pas. Donc,
théoriquement.
Qui est l'autorité là-dessus? Ce sont d'autres femmes.
Ah oui.
Elles-mêmes. Donc, la négociation se fait entre femmes. Donc, quand Dobie Baum et d'autres femmes artistes sont sur Instagram, ont des comptes sur Instagram, qui normalement ne devraient pas avoir de compte sur Instagram, même si ce sont des comptes privés qui sont réservés uniquement aux hommes, elles négocient et elles décident pour elles-mêmes. Donc, il y a une forme à la fois de renforcement de l'orthodoxie, mais aussi de challenge, de mettre au défi les autorités religieuses. Et pour l'instant, ce qui est fascinant, c'est qu'il n'y a pas eu il n'y a pas d'intervention, de grosse intervention comme il y a pu avoir pour l'Internet. Alors, il continue d'avoir toujours ce discours très fort contre Internet, etc. Mais pourtant, ça se passe. Et c'est un peu, on sait que ça se passe, on ne dit rien. Tant qu'il n'y a personne qui vient c'est une forme de négociation, c'est ça, une forme de négociation, c'est une rencontre aussi. Et donc, toutes ces femmes créent aussi de plus en plus une communauté avec, elles ont 10 000 followers sur Instagram. Elles deviennent aussi des véritables célébrités. Et ici, bon, par exemple, à Montréal, il y en a eu quelques-unes qui ont été invitées à venir jouer, je suis invitée dans les camps. Donc, elles sont connues par ces jeunes filles comme étant des célébrités. Alors, ce n'est pas forcément tout le monde. Et je pense que la norme n'est pas de dire ma jeune fille, ma fille, on veut qu'elle soit une célébrité. Mais ça reste que c'est présent, ça existe. Et il faudrait voir dans 10 ans ce que ça va créer. Mais il y a de plus en plus d'écoles aussi, de cours privés. Donc, l'idée de faire des extra-curriculum dans les arts qui devient de plus en plus important. Et c'est à suivre d'ici une dizaine d'années, qu'est-ce que tout ça va donner.
Mais la musique est un outil puissant de transmission, hein, de toute façon. Donc, je pense qu'on a intérêt à encourager.
Voilà, et en plus, c'est par les femmes, pour les femmes. Donc, il y a vraiment c'est justement l'occasion de créer ces espaces-là. Je voudrais maintenant vous faire écouter un autre, pour montrer aussi ce que ces nouvelles productions artistiques produisent. Et récemment, il y a eu un nouveau vidéoclip, une nouvelle composition qui s'appelle The Laurie Song, qui a aussi été mise à disposition au moment du Covid, au mois de mai. Et je voudrais maintenant vous faire écouter cette chanson intéressante et on discutera après des enjeux et de l'impact que ça peut avoir.
It's hard to believe that a sister so divine could be taken away too soon. After sipping cedar wine, you were the silver lining in our darkened cloud. Now your eternal soul is shining, but our broken hearts enshroud. Oh, glory marches to the throne of glory. With your tambourine in hand, dance the Jewish people to our land, where we will finally understand it was all for the glory of Hashem, and we'll be happy once again. Oh, glory. The rock of your Chabad, you made the sanctuary shine. You gave up your heart and soul, inspiring colorful design. You gifted us with grace, your ever smiling face aglow. Without singing you this melody, we cannot let you go. Oh, glory marches to the throne of glory. With your tambourine in hand, dance the Jewish people to our land, where we will finally understand it was all for the glory of Hashem, and we'll be happy once again. Oh, glory.
Maintenant, vous venez d'entendre le Laurie Song qui est une composition originale du Los Angeles Jewish Ladies Choir. Et en fait, c'est assez fascinant parce que c'est la première composition transnationale faite par ce qu'on appelle des From Female Artists, par des femmes orthodoxes qui se situent principalement entre les États-Unis et Israël. Et en fait, elles ont collaboré à l'échelle donc transnationale. Et je voulais montrer cet exemple-là pour montrer aussi à quel point la technologie permettait de créer aujourd'hui un nouveau corpus de chants partagés à l'échelle transnationale, donc qui peut être écouté entre les États-Unis, le Canada, l'Angleterre, là où il y a toute une diaspora orthodoxe ou chassidique, et qui va avoir accès, en fait, peut avoir accès à ce patrimoine. Donc, il y a vraiment l'idée de créer aussi un nouveau patrimoine fait et mis à disposition par les femmes et pour les femmes. Et ça, c'est aussi quelque chose qui sera très intéressant à suivre. Et malgré le fait que, évidemment, les technologies et Internet par les autorités rabbiniques est toujours contexté, ou il y a vraiment une tension ici, on voit à quel point ces femmes-là utilisent la technologie, utilisent Internet malgré tout pour à la fois pour renforcer aussi le système, parce que c'est vraiment l'idée de créer sisterhood. D'ailleurs, dans la chanson, elle parle de Laurie comme une sister, donc vraiment de créer, de renforcer ce sentiment de sisterhood à travers l'orthodoxie.
Alors, rappelle-nous un petit peu Laurie, le sujet de Laurie, parce que tu...
Oui, alors c'est assez important. Donc, la chanson a été composée en hommage à Laurie Gilbert Kay, qui a perdu la vie lors de l'attaque antisémite en 2019 pendant Pessah à la Poway Synagogue de Los Angeles. C'est vraiment l'idée aussi dans beaucoup de ces chansons-là, c'est d'essayer de répondre à l'actualité politique, ou dans le cadre de l'Omidan, vous avez vu aussi que c'était une chanson en réponse à la COVID. Donc, voilà. Okay, so we shift into English, I think now.
Yeah.
Yep, I think Malky should be joining.
Yeah,
so we have Malky Weingartner. This is a great honor to have Malky Weingartner, one of the most famous artists in the Hasidic Orthodox community, from female artists. So Malky, can I
Si tu me permets, Jessica, je vais juste dire 2 mots en français sur Malky pour les auditeurs francophones. Alors, pour juste la situer, Malky est cinéaste. Elle est formée à la School of Visual Arts de New York et à la New York Film Academy. Donc, comme Jessica le mentionnait, elle s'est formée à l'extérieur de la communauté et elle a produit une série de vidéos conformes, de vidéos destinées aux femmes et aux filles. Donc, bienvenue Malky à notre émission. Donc, voilà, merci.
Okay, so Malky, we'll do your introduction in French because we have an audience in French. So as you know, Montreal, Quebec is bilingual. And, you know, everybody's going to now have access to our exchange. We are very, very happy to have you on. So just to present your work. So this is extremely important as I wanted to introduce all your DVDs. So this is this is the first movie that Malky produced. So it's called Mali, and then there is a Mali 2, there is a Mali 3, where she has a baby. Maybe you will be able to explain or to talk about it. And this is Mrs. Angels as well. And this is also very important because in all Malky Weingartner movies, there's a lot of songs that are also available. So this is the CD, and you also have it, you know, CD and USB key, and you can download on Nigel Music and Mostly Music. What is important to say is that all of this is for women only, women and girls only. So Malky Weingartner is a female artist, female filmmaker. Also, she's a painter. So I wanted to mention that because she's not only a filmmaker and screenwriter, she's a painter, a dancer.
And also, I'd like to add that she's an advocate of the rights of the disabled persons. Donc, c'est une défenseuse des droits des personnes handicapées. Et and she produced she wrote some stories around that theme, I think.
Yes. So we'll gonna watch about 5 minutes of a short movie, and then we'll have a conversation with Malky Weingartner about her production and her, you know, her life as a filmmaker. And this is very nice to have Shlomi with us tonight as well. So it's great. It's great. We love that. This is the life, you know, work family balance. Okay. So now there is the video, so people will be able to watch the video.
What makes our films kosher is that there is no violence, no romance, no cursing, no bad language, no nudity. Basically, it's a boring movie. Hey, hey! If I wasn't doing movies, I'd be doing movies.
Bagel stock, we have room 7 available.
There's a creative side of me that needs to constantly be creating. I tried to take a sabbatical for a year, and I was not successful. I cater to the Orthodox women specifically who are not watching movies at the theaters or at home. They're not watching any secular movies. We cover such tiny little niche because the very, very Orthodox are not watching it, and the ones who are a little more out there and a little more modern are also not watching it. We filled that little hole. I don't shoot my own movies. I leave all the cinematography to Jared. I can't focus on that when I'm on set because I'm busy being a director.
Do this conversation again.
Yeah, I think so too.
No, we're going to do it again, but from another angle.
Yeah.
I've been working with Melky for 5 years now. I went to film school. I got a master's degree in film. I've worked on like a number of film sets. What I found like very interesting about the films that are being produced in the Hasidic community is that they're really making it happen with next to little or no resources whatsoever.
Why is it going to take 2 hours? This just took 2 hours. Right.
It's just us, just women performing for just women. We're not performing for men. We don't act together with men. In our community, everything is kept separate.
You don't even notice after a while. It's not like an obvious thing where you're like, oh, we're the men.
About this house is that
where
it
you
has
from?
balloons in front. Look how cool it is that there are balloons in front of this house.
Why do we love it when someone cracks up? If they crack up in the middle of acting, that's called a blooper?
How's everyone at Oh, good. Everyone's really good. Baruch Hashem.
Jared is part of the process because that's his job, and of course his rabbis have told him that this is what you do for a living, and it's different. Just like a doctor has different rules when it comes to checking women, same thing with someone who's a cinematographer. If he has to work with women, it's different.
So now
Years
there's the
ago when I
video,
first started,
so
I
people
got
will
that
be.
initial kind of allowance to do it, so I'm basing all of it on that. What were they actually singing?
Alexander Hamilton, yeah.
What is Alexander Hamilton?
Oh my gosh, Hamilton is a Broadway musical
Ah.
that is so expensive, and you can't even get tickets even if you wanted to, and they're running for
Because of the concept of like modesty in the community, and I had to be even more so meticulous than I ever was before. Because if we shoot something and like a knee is showing, we're actually not allowed to use the footage. So we know from experience.
I've already made 4 full feature movies, and I'm working on my 5th right now. The movies that I've done, all based on a girl with Asperger's. Her name is Molly. It's just basically how the community accepts her throughout her life. In Molly 1, she wants to go to school. In Molly 2, she wants to be married like everybody else in our community because we get married. And then in Molly 3, she has a child.
And you have me. Together we, was we were meant to be.
These films premiere on Chol Hamoed of Sukkot and Pesach. We usually screen the movies twice, and after we screen it twice, it usually gets put on DVD and it sells in all the stores, wherever there are Orthodox Jewish people.
And nobody ever got sick?
I make a basic assessment of how many women and girls have watched the movie itself, and then when it comes out on DVD, I would say somewhere between 40 and 50,000 women and girls that have watched my movie.
Let's continue. So Malki, and I'm sorry, I should say Mrs. Weingarten, but I can't. I'm we're friends, so I call you Malky, you call me Jessica. So that's wonderful. The first question that I wanted to ask you, Malky, is can you tell us a little bit about this crazy idea that you had with the story of Mali, and where and how you started this project and this series, because there is Mali 1, Mali 2, Mali 3, and now there's going to be Mali 4. So if you want to introduce our audience to your production and your work.
Okay, so you wanted to know what gave me the idea to do a film, specifically a film, or what gave me the idea to do it about Mali? And
so first about film, and more specifically about Mali, how everything started.
Okay, so my sisters and I, we've been acting live.
Your phone froze. Your screen is.
Sorry, but okay, I'm back here. Okay, because my phone is also I'm on Zoom, but it's also my phone, so everyone's trying to call me, but it's okay. I'm ignoring everybody now. But if we have any pauses, it's because people are trying to reach me. Okay, so I've been acting live on stage for different events in the community. And it was really hard to get the props together and to prepare to be live on stage. And then you're just there once. We had a lot of practicing. And so we said, maybe instead of trying to make the stage look like a kitchen, let's just film ourselves in a kitchen. And then we can just put a screen on the stage and you'll see the scene of us in a kitchen. So we started doing little clips like that, and then it morphed into full-blown full feature films. But we started doing lives. We would do little comedy sketches. My expertise was comedy. I did a very good I Love Lucy impersonation. People would tell me all the time, it's so funny, you remind me of Lucy. You know Lucy? So a lot of people in our community don't have internet, TV or internet or exposure. So they weren't sure if I knew who Lucy was. And, they would come over to me and say, there's a character who you look like. Her name is Lucy, and your faces are just like hers. And I actually know Lucy, because some of the times we would take some of her episodes and we would kosherize them. We would kosherize them and change them around a little bit and make them okay for our community. And so yeah, I knew about Lucy. So that's how I started, and so that's how I got into making films. And if your question was also what inspired me to do a film about Molly is a girl that has Asperger's and she's on the spectrum. And so this is trying to reach me. That was actually inspired by my son who is on the spectrum, and I just switched it around to a female version. That's your answer.
Mm-hmm. Right. And there is Mali 1, Mali 2, Mali 3. I think this is something very interesting in your work, is the kind of also idea that you're trying to, and a kind of awareness that you're trying to bring with your movie. So the Mali is about, you can say, disability, and then there is Mrs. Angels, who is about elderness, I would say. Kind of difficult topics that you're trying to present to girls. Also, I think it's interesting to explain how and when your movies are received. Can you tell us a little bit about the process of making the movie and then making available for the community?
Yeah, sure. So when my original idea was to make a film about a girl with special needs, I was told, it's a touchy subject, maybe don't. And I said, it's a touchy subject, maybe yes. So my idea is that if my films are going to be out there, they have to be making a difference, or I can't waste my time. You know, as an Orthodox woman, we believe that we have a limited amount of time down here. We need to be fulfilling every moment that we can with things that will make a difference and leave this world a better place. If I can't, if it's not, you know, I already came to the realization that in terms of money, it's not so lucrative. If this was definitely not going to be a way for me to be,
Rich.
if it was not going to be, you know, a business or a way for me to make money and get rich, exactly, then it was going to have another purpose, and that purpose was going to have to be to inspire and make a change. And so that's what I feel like I need to constantly do.
Yes, and actually about
sorry, I just want to finish. And my next script actually is about mental health in the community, and it's a huge stigma that our community has not overcome. Nobody can talk about anxiety. Nobody talks about depression. It's a huge, huge secret, and that's why the name of the movie is going to be Hush, because there are a lot of things in our community that's hush, but this is one of them, and I think it's time. I think it's time to talk about it, to bring it out in the open, stop covering it up. Why shouldn't people that, you know, are suffering, why shouldn't they be able to talk about it? Why should they have to suffer in silence, and why should they have to be shamed and be made to feel like they did something wrong, and so they can't be helped or spoken about? Or so I decided that that's going to be my next. I was promptly told, no, Malki, don't do that. That's really, really sensitive. It's a very touchy subject. You might be getting into trouble. And I said, oh yeah? Oh, okay, good. Let's do it.
You're a real militant. Provocateur.
so, yeah, about the, now I would like to talk about, you know, the economy and maybe a little bit about the impact of COVID on your work.
Okay, so COVID hit our community hard, and a lot of people got sick. We feel like it's over because no one's getting sick anymore, even though the rest of the world is still claiming that it's still dangerous. I saw it when it was dangerous. Our community had it. And our community is so close-knit. I'm talking about Brooklyn, New York. And we all picked it up, because over Purim, which is that holiday where everybody gets together, you dress up. It's like, you know, the Halloween version where everyone's trick-or-treating and going to each other's houses. And so there are parties. And at that point, it wasn't spoken about, and nobody was really so scared about it yet. That was in the beginning of March. Then came Purim, and we all got it, everybody. So we were all affected by it. And anyway, so that's I'm just telling you that I feel like it's over. Like, I wear a mask to make everybody around me happy. I'm saying everyone around me, as in wherever I go, and people want us to wear masks. But in our community, we really feel like it's over. So at this point, it's either just political, or I'm not sure. This is my son. Every now and then he wants to say hi.
Hello, Shlomi. Beautiful.
Okay. All right, that's enough. Thank you. I love you. Give me some space. So then came Passover. On Passover, my latest movie was supposed to be screening, but because events were not stop. Really need to stop. Because events were not being allowed, we had to push it off. And so, you know, you could definitely say that I lost money that was supposed to help to cover the costs of my movie. I didn't come in. So that money was supposed to go so that I can make my next movie, which I am writing right now, the one about mental illness called Hush. So it definitely impacted us too. You know, a lot of businesses were closed for a very long time now. Things are opening up slowly.
What was there an increase in downloads during that time, Malky, because a lot of kids were at home. So this is an interesting also discussion I heard here in Montreal that a lot of kids were mentioning and parents that it saved them. So I was wondering if there was much more downloads, or how do you feel about?
Yes. Okay, so on the one hand, because we couldn't have public gatherings, I couldn't show my film, my latest one. But my films, after they're screened a few times, they go on to DVD. I already have 4 films on DVD, one that's SD. It still needs to be screened to make some money, to have some money come in to cover its costs. So, but the ones that are on DVD did do well, because people that were stuck in their houses and school was canceled, I know that a lot of my DVDs were being sold, and my distributor, who reports back to me and he tells me how well my DVDs are doing, he told me that over COVID, we definitely sold more. So did it balance out at the end? I don't think so. I still lost more money because the screening brings in more money than the DVDs do. And that's
I have a question about the screenings. How are they organized? How do you organize the screenings? Are they done in an exclusively female audience and in theaters, or how is it done?
Yes. So it's advertised in our local newspapers as a film for women only. And we don't have theaters. So we take halls, wedding halls, what do you call that?
School premises, or
school, they have the big rooms with a chair set up and the stages or whatever. So we set up a screen, and I have a distributor that distributes. I have a distributor that distributes my DVDs, but I also have a distributor who arranges these screenings for me. She arranges them all over the world. It's in many different places in the United States. It's also in Belgium and in London and in Israel, and any place where there's a large enough Orthodox community of women who are not watching movies and are interested in kosher media because they're not watching other things.
Okay, that's wonderful. You're bringing a lot of.
And it's happening also in Montreal. I remember when during Chalamoid Sukkot, when I had a privilege to participate to one of the premiere of Hello Tomorrow. And I remember that they were also organizing a screening here in Montreal at the same time I was in Borough Park. So yeah, it's happening here. I think they're renting a space on Hutchison and Fairmount. So yeah, this is happening in a lot of different.
Wonderful.
Yeah. Would you like to talk a little bit about because we see Shlomi around you, maybe the balance between your life
don't worry about it.
Professional filmmaker and also the mother of 7 kids. So,
okay, that was the question.
Jobs.
How do you balance work and life?
So, it is a balance. I think that I feel like I got a handle on it. I feel like I got a grip on it. The only time it gets really, really complicated.
We lost you, Malky.
Yeah, I'm back now.
Yeah.
So the only time it's really complicated is when I'm actually filming. Mm-hmm. Because when I write the script, I just do it, in my spare time, when the kids are not around, when the kids are in school, anything that I need to, auditions, do, anything that I need to do, I work around it. Just filming is full, long, 12-hour days.
Mm-hmm.
And that's the only thing that becomes a little bit of a problem. But my kids know that I'm filming. They count down the days, and when I'm done, there's balloons, there's a party, mommy's back home, we got our mother back. After filming, there's editing. The editing process, I don't know. The editing process is also easy to work around because I can edit when I have time. Once you start filming though, there's no stopping. Once I'm filming, I gotta be into it. I need my actresses and everybody to be with me and available for a 6-week duration. We film in 6 weeks and we're done.
That's wonderful. So you have a support. You have a supportive environment, I guess. Family, a supportive family.
I'm not going to say my kids don't complain. My kids complain. You know, in the film that you showed a piece of. I don't know if you showed that specific piece, but in the film, the cinematographer was interviewing me while I was in my kitchen, and my kids were around. And she says, "So, how do you juggle with your kids?" So I said, "Well, my kids come first." So my daughter, who was standing there, says, "Really?" She says, "I'll remind you next time when you want to run out and film something, and I'm begging you to stay home," you know? So it's like the typical scenario where the mother works and she has to leave and she has to go and do stuff, and the kids are complaining, "No, don't go," you know?
Of course.
But I don't think it's excessive. Like, I don't think I'm out excessively. I try to work around their schedules, except for the filming. By the filming, I'm out to lunch. There's nobody home. I am so in the filming for 6 weeks. I have to say I'm totally out of it. But my kids know. They get ready for it. I tell everybody I'm going to be filming 6 weeks. Then you get your mother back. So.
Wonderful.
Yeah.
Very dedicated
So
artist.
maybe for the last question, Malky, how do you see the future of the film or from female artists? One of the last also movie, there was some collaboration with other women from the Afro-American communities. So is it something that you might explore, kind of this collaboration between other women from other religious community? I don't know, I'm just mentioning this, but it could be anything else. How do you see the future? I know that you're also collaborating a lot with Chaya Sarah, another from female filmmaker, so that you're really in this spirit of collaboration. So if you want to talk about or imagine the future, what it would be for your work. Or maybe
Right.
editing. I know that you're not editing, but is it something that you're going to do, or you're
Right.
more the creative personality? But
Right. So there are, in your question, I hear a few questions. So I'm going to try and address them all because I'm not sure what specifically, but I think I hear a few questions. So basically, collaborate with women in my community. I love that idea. What's the future? And I do that all the time. What's the future? The future, I see more women picking up on this, more women in our community saying, "Wow, I can do that." Some random person that follows me on Instagram just asked me if I can read her script. She wants to write a movie. And I said, sure. So she sent it to me and I'm going through her script. It's not bad. If she makes it into a movie, wonderful. And I don't think of it as competition. I think of it as our community needs more. We need more. We need kosher entertainment because I myself, so I have 7 kids, right? I have 5 girls. I didn't let them watch just anything, you know. I let them watch some Disney movies. Some of my kids' friends, their parents wouldn't let them watch Frozen, and I allowed Frozen, so I'm very liberal. So that's your answer. That's your answer in regards to collaborating within the community. If your question is, would I branch out outside of the community? Am I looking to have my movies maybe be seen outside of my community. So that topic is I'll try and pinpoint and zero in real quick on to what I want to say about that. I struggle with that sometimes. Sometimes I say, I'm just doing movies for our community. Maybe my movies are good enough to get out there and be wow and be really big, and maybe I'll be famous and all the rest of that. And there's a part of me that says, no, Malki, that's not what your goal is.
Mm-hmm.
Because if your goal is to provide entertainment for your community, it's okay. You don't need to be famous, because you're fulfilling your goal, and your fulfillment is knowing that you are filling a niche in the community. And I love my community, and I'm so happy that I can give them what they need, which is kosher entertainment. And that mostly 99.9% of the time, that fills me up, and I feel so fulfilled, and I feel like I don't need more than this. This is good enough for me. I don't need to be rich. I don't need to be famous. I'm happy that I am doing for my community what they need. But then every now and then there's a little voice in the back of my head that says, Malki, maybe you want to enter something into a competition. Maybe you want to make a little short and put it into a, one of these film festivals and see if your work is good enough to compete with what's out there. And then the other voice says, why, Malki? What do you need it for? What do you need it for?
Just to respond to that, Malki, and then, so you know that the way Orthodox, especially Hasidic women and Orthodox women are portrayed by the general media is very, very black and white, and I would say also saying that there is no space for women to be part of the entertainment, etc. And your figure and everything that you're doing is the opposite of this image, but because indeed it's extremely private, and it has to stay private, do you think that this idea of how do you think about breaking the bridge in a certain way, or do you think it's important to break that bridge or not?
So that is a really good question. I know that there are lots of people out there in the world that know nothing about our community. They only know what they've seen. And unfortunately, the only information that's out there about our community is really negative. And if there is anything positive, it just didn't make it as big as the negative things. For example, and I'm sure this was coming up somewhere in the conversation, because here I am and I'm about to bring it up, unorthodox. It's possible that there are some people in our community that have experienced what this woman in unorthodox has experienced. This was her experience, and I am not saying that it isn't true. I am going to say, though, it's a minority. I'm in the community, and I can tell you, it's not typical of our community. But for everybody else watching it, they don't know anything else, and they think this is typical of our community. It is not, and it's not fair. And all I'm saying is it's not fair. So there's a part of me that sometimes feels like, Malki, go out there. Tell everybody it's not like that. Tell everybody. And then there's the other part that says, it's not your job. Your job is to take care of your community. Your job is not to educate the whole world. A lot of people want to think negatively about our community anyway. No matter what you're going to say, they're going to misconstrue it and say, like you're looking at it in a positive way that, wow, that's so nice. She's filling a niche for the community, right? People who want to think negatively could be watching this, and they could be saying, even with a positive thing like what we're doing now, they could say, this poor woman, she can't go out there and do anything big because she can only do it for her community. She's so limited. I feel so bad for her, things like that. You know what I'm saying? Like, if people want to think negatively, they will think negatively. So on the one hand, I'm thinking, no, I need to do something to change what the whole world is thinking about our community. On the other hand, I'm like, no, Malki, you can't fight it. It is what it is.
You are doing your part by speaking out. And I'm glad that you're doing it with us at the Jewish Public Library in Montreal. Really, I'm really pleased to hear your opinion and to hear you articulate it in such a clear and positive way, because there's always two sides to a reality, and you have to be able to see both sides and to have a moderate view. Thank you, Malki, for speaking out.
Sure, my pleasure.
Wonderful. So I think this is was a wonderful conversation that we had. I'm glad that you were able to join us, Malki. I will leave maybe Yolande for the mot de la fin. So we have hopefully we have a lot of Francophone audience because here in Montreal, this is a difficult topic. So I really hope we'll have an important audience.
A large audience. Well, obviously we're aiming to do this, and we'll do our best to market this video through the Jewish Public Library to different audiences. And I really want to thank you, Malki, first for making yourself available and for agreeing to be on screen with us and to participate to this discussion. It was absolutely enlightening, and I think that we hope to be able to see your films wherever they're shown in the framework that they're shown in. And I wish you all the best of success. And you are doing you are making a difference for sure.
Thank you so much.
Thank you very much for your contribution.
Thank you so much for saying that.
And Jessica, je ne sais pas comment te remercier. Merci beaucoup de nous avoir présenté cette réalité magnifique, cette activité, cette créativité de la communauté chassidique et dans le monde entier. Et je pense qu'on doit tous s'en réjouir. Je pense qu'il faut aussi pouvoir voir les deux côtés d'une même réalité. Donc c'est important d'avoir un point de vue équilibré et de respecter chacun dans ses choix et dans ses choix de vie. Donc merci vraiment, Jessica, de nous avoir fait partager ton intérêt pour cette production artistique. Et puis, nous avons hâte de lire ton livre et tes articles. Et
merci.
Voilà, nous avons hâte nous t'accueillerons à nouveau. Nous espérons faire d'autres événements avec toi et tes invités magnifiques. Alors, merci à tous et à très bientôt. Shana Tova à tout le monde. Nous serons de retour pour notre programmation du mois du livre juif à l'automne. Donc, merci beaucoup à tous et merci de votre écoute et de votre fidélité à la Bibliothèque publique juive de Montréal.
Merci Yolande. Bonne soirée.